After 30 years in a career that made me second guess my tone, my worth, and whether or not my face was accidentally rude, I finally saw it. Work isn't just work, it's behavioral conditioning that follows you into every part of your life. If you watched my earlier video called The Game, you can think of that one as the rule book. 5 truths about how the system works and how to survive it. This video here is what happens after the survival. The emotional residue, if you will. The game was the map, this is the terrain. This isn't a how-to, this is a holy crap, now I see it. This shows up everywhere, in restaurants, classrooms, construction sites, relationships, group chats, especially group chats. Psh. Group chats, where boundaries die, politics thrive, and Chad thinks that he's regional director of morale because he sends memes every morning at 6 a.m. You start to see the same power dynamics in a staff meeting and at a family dinner, and you realize, oh God, I've been trained for this. Not to thrive, but to tolerate. Not to question, but to adapt. Because bias and bullshit are baked in, not in some abstract HR compliance way, in the daily rituals that taught you what's acceptable and what that looks like. You start adapting without even realizing it, not just at work, but in how you text, how you date, how you ask for help, how you walk into a room. That adaptation doesn't just shape your work life, it reshapes who you are even after you clock out. So, this isn't a career advice video. I'm not giving you 5 steps to get promoted or whatever motivational cult-flavored nonsense is trending on LinkedIn this week. This is a survival guide for what comes next, a decoder ring for spotting the aftershocks, a look at the psychological training that we got from work and how it follows us into everything else. And if you don't learn how to spot where that training is still running the show, you won't just burn out at work. You'll start disappearing in your own life. You don't always know you're being exploited while it's happening because it always starts small. You go above and beyond once, and now that's just your job description. Congratulations, you just invented a new position, unpaid department hero. You played yourself. You played yourself. I gotta tell you though, you're not just being helpful, you're being groomed so that the system can exploit the hell out of your reliability. They start sending you Slack messages with smiley faces and asking if you can just knock this out real quick at 4:47 p.m. on a Friday. Because nothing says healthy boundaries like the prayer hands emoji and a deadline before sunset. The weirdest part is how long you don't see it. I know I didn't. I just thought I was being a team player. You know, staying late means I'm committed, that picking up extra shifts or fixing someone else's mess is just what good employees do. No one tells you that helpfulness is being weaponized, that your ability to handle it just makes you the go-to dumping ground. You're not building resilience, you're building calluses on your dignity. You keep repeating to yourself, it's not that bad. Other people have it worse. I'm lucky to have a job. This is just how it is. Come on, suck it up, buttercup. Put those big girl panties on. Here's the thing. What happens at work doesn't stay at work. You carry it everywhere. In the friendship where you're always giving. In the relationship where your helpfulness is taken for granted. In the dynamic where being dependable has made you invisible. That instinct to overfunction, it's in your texts where you write 19 drafts before saying no, and you still end up adding a smiley face, you know, for tone. You're the emotional first responder in every friendship, the one who just knows what people need because you've been trained to anticipate the chaos and respond before it even starts. You don't schedule rest, oh no, you earn it like a prize in a rigged game. You give yourself unpaid performance reviews in sweatpants and call it a day off. You treat your to-do list like it's going to be audited. You sit down to rest and immediately your brain's like, did I ever respond to that text? Ooh, are we out of coffee? What if I die and someone sees inside my nightstand drawer? You start spiraling with a side of productivity. You're wiping crumbs out of the silverware tray and suddenly you're deep into a 4-hour forensic audit of your Tupperware. You find paprika from 2008. You Google how to wash a washing machine while mentally drafting an apology email to someone that you haven't even spoken to since 2019. You lint roll your lampshades. You color code your underwear. You clean the grout with a toothbrush that you actually labeled grout like that's a normal human thing to do. And the worst part, you still feel behind. So yeah, naming the pattern doesn't fix it, but it does break the trance. It reminds you that this wasn't your personality. This was your training. And once you see it, you start noticing where else it's still running. Not just at work, but in the ways that you disappear inside your own life. And honestly, that's not even the worst part. There's something that we all thought that was true that it turns out was a lie. I need you to understand that being good at your job doesn't protect you. Being excellent doesn't protect you. Being loyal, overqualified, and a joy to have on the team does not protect you. We are conditioned to be a hard worker, right? Be nice, be reliable, be early, be a team player. Don't you cause drama and don't ask for too much. Don't act entitled. Basically, be everything that your company would list on a Culture Fit poster in the break room next to a dead plan and a QR code that no one scanned since before the pandemic. Congratulations, you're now a Gold Star overachiever. Redeemable for 0 favors, 0 raises, and a stress ball that's shaped like a light bulb that says think big, and it's written in Comic Sans. But it's a scam. Being good makes you easier to ignore because performance was never the currency. Perception was. Because when you're good, like capital G good, you become predictable. And predictable people are convenient. You're the one who doesn't need help, right? You don't make waves. You quietly cover the shift. You quietly do the cleanup. You quietly get passed over and say, thank you for the traumatunity. That same wiring follows you home. Now you're the good friend who never asks for anything. The good partner who carries the weight but doesn't complain. The good daughter who doesn't bring up the family tension because it's not the right time. You remember birthdays and no one reciprocates. You RSVP to things that you dread. You ask what works best for everyone else, even when your whole week is falling apart. You offer to drive people to the airport and you say, let me know how I can support you, like you're everyone's personal emotional jockstrap. Not because you want to, but because that's what you think good people do. At work, you call it being professional. At home, you call it being polite. But it's all the same muscle. And honey, it's exhausted. Because part of you still believes that if you do enough, you'll finally feel safe. But no one tells you that high performance has a half-life, that being good gets you more work, more pressure, and eventually a reputation that you now have to keep up and cosplay indefinitely. That's how we end up here, where we start mistaking overachievement for connection and competence for value. You don't ask for what you need, you pre-guess what will keep the peace. You don't show up, you shrink in advance just in case someone needed the extra room. So, when that doesn't get you what you need, you assume that the problem is you. So you double down on the goodness like a gambler trying to win back their dignity with a 20 and a free therapy trial code. You read the books, you take the workshop, you apologize for being overwhelmed. And when it all inevitably breaks down, because no human being can maintain that forever, you don't just feel tired, you feel like a failure. You start spiraling like, why am I so behind on laundry? And why am I so fundamentally unlovable? Because you weren't just performing for a paycheck, you were performing for a sense of worth, right? And the moment the performance drops, the self-doubt lets itself in with their key and eats all your snacks. No one told us that we were allowed to just be, right? We don't have to be helpful, not high functioning, just be human. But when your whole identity is wrapped in output, rest doesn't feel like rest. It feels like a risk. And that instinct to be the good one, it doesn't just haunt your resume, it hijacks your relationships. So yeah, be good isn't enough. It's just the dress code for your own invisibility. Work didn't just stress your limits, it taught you how to override them. Congratulations, you've been promoted to crisis concierge. No pay, no hours off, but wow, do people love your response time. You weren't rewarded for being reliable, you were handed more. So now even when no one's asking, you're still volunteering as tribute. So you start setting boundaries. At that exact moment, people don't get curious, they get offended. Like you just switched religions or started selling leggings out of the back of your trunk. You say, hey, I can't take that on right now. And suddenly you're the villain in a story that no one told you that you were in. And not like the cool villain, like the group chat without you kind of villain. Most people hear you say no and immediately think, how dare you stop being useful to me, right? No one hears that it's a boundary. They hear betrayal set to jazz hands. No! And you can feel it, that shift in energy, right? That slightly too long pause before they say, no worries. In that high pitch with the fake ass smile. Now you're spiraling. Like, was I too direct? Do I need to follow up with a fruit basket and a note that says, please still like me? Because we were trained to think that setting boundaries at work was rude, and therefore we don't set them in our lives for that reason. Needing rest means you're lazy. Saying no means you're unreliable. Showing up to work with a cracked molar and a UTI is dedication. Is any of this sounding familiar? And so we learn to soften everything. Sorry if this is too much to ask. Hey, no pressure, but it's totally fine if not, right? You've been trained to over-explain until your boundaries sounded like a birthday card with glitter and a coupon code. We write entire paragraphs just to cushion the crime of having a limit. Because in meetings, clarity made you abrasive. In emails, brevity read cold. God forbid you send someone a one-sentence reply and ruin their whole morning. So without even realizing it, you've become a customer service chatbot with seasonal depression and a crippling fear of being misunderstood. Dude, I'm just trying to order a coffee without sounding aggressive. Hi, can I please get a caramel latte and also your forgiveness for existing? Thank you. It shows up when your friend asks for just a quick call because Mercury's in Gatorade and I'm spiraling, right? On that one night that you had blocked for you. It shows up when you say, I can't tonight, and then you spend the next 2 hours drafting a message that sounds supportive, chill, and not like you secretly hate them at all. At work, you were praised for being the one who just gets it done, but no one taught you how to stop. So now, responsiveness is just like your new personality, I guess, like a smoke detector with anxiety. It's always alert and never thanked. At this point, I don't even say no anymore. I just slowly stop responding to people until I'm like legally classified as a vapor. Think about this. When you've been conditioned to solve everything, you don't notice how fast you start solving yourself out of the equation. You skip lunch to finish the thing. You skip sleep to prep for finishing the thing. You stop asking what you want because you're too busy answering what everybody else needs. At some point, you don't even realize that it's self-abandonment because you've dressed it up as being dependable. So, tell me this, when did you realize that the thing that you were proud of was actually just a warped little flavor of survival mode? Drop your moment in the comments. You don't want to be a burden, so you don't ask for help. You don't want to seem selfish, so you offer before anyone even looks in your direction. You start confusing silence with stability, avoidance with peace, exhaustion with maturity. And before you know it, being the bigger person has become your entire personality, except now you're big, burnt out, and weirdly resenting everyone who thinks that you're fine. And you're one more favor away from biting someone in public. Which honestly, for the record, is most of my one-on-ones. They're just people showing up and they're like, hi, I've become feral. Is that bad? If that's you, book a time, bring your chaos. Self-abandonment is sneaky like that. It doesn't hit like a car crash. It shows up in to-do lists and calendar invites, in the way that you always pick the restaurant that makes everyone else happy, in the way that you never text first, but you always respond fast, in the way that you keep showing up until you don't even know what showing up for yourself would look like. You've become a support beam that no one sees until you collapse. Think about this. What if you thought collapsing was a sign you couldn't handle it, when really it was proof that you were never meant to? Once you start naming patterns, it doesn't just change how you work, it changes how you live. You start seeing how every job trains you to expect less support, less pay, less dignity. But hey, free pizza on Fridays. You notice how every team player moment rewired your nervous system to read chaos as normal. How every time you were praised for handling it so well, it just meant that they were going to give you more to carry. It doesn't stop at the office door. You overfunction in your relationships, your family groups, your texts, your calendar, and even your therapy sessions. You're basically the unpaid intern for everyone else's emotional dysfunction, except you never applied. And there's no freaking coffee. You catch yourself apologizing for things that aren't even your fault, shrinking your needs because you think that they're too much, explaining your tone like you're pre-defending a performance review. You flinch when your phone rings. You start texts with disclaimers. You hear a pause in someone's voice and your whole body thinks that you're in trouble. That's not anxiety. That's conditioning. Now, I've got a whole crew of people like this. We meet once a week. YouTube makes me call it a membership, but it's really just a support group for emotionally overfunctioning goblins. You see how much of your personality was built to survive dysfunction. How much of your politeness is just fear in a cute little outfit. How many of your relationships run on your silence, your softness, your willingness to carry things that no one asked if you could even hold. It's not bitterness, it's pattern recognition. You're not overreacting. It turns out it wasn't all in your head. It was all in your job description. But that's not a crisis. That's just information. You can adjust. You can let it be true that work has changed you, and you still make different choices now. You can set a boundary without explaining it like a dissertation. You can say no without offering a backup plan. You can rest without earning it. You can want something without having to justify it. You can stop explaining your existence like it's a late night assignment. But if part of you is still waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel healed, or waiting to become the version of yourself who's finally allowed to want more, That version might never show up. And if you don't pay attention here, you might miss your whole life trying to become someone that you already are.